Welcome to Lazyreviews. Today's video is about Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 Initiation, the sequel to Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 Better Watch Out. I already made videos about the first 3 installments in the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise, and well, you can watch them if you haven't watched them already, but actually, you don't really have to, because Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 has absolutely nothing to do with any of the previous movies in the franchise. There's really no reason to not just go in and watching this as a standalone film, because that's what it is. It's completely detached from anything that makes the franchise Silent Night, Deadly Night, for better and for worse, as we will talk about. If this review of this movie sounds interesting to you, go ahead and watch it maybe, even if you haven't watched the first 3 movies. And actually, I would say Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 is such a weird movie that maybe you don't even want it to be spoiled. In that case, yes, watch it. If you can watch Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, go ahead and watch it before I spoil it in this review, because I will spoil it. Because it's such a weird movie that it's almost impossible to talk about without actually just explaining what's going on in the movie. And therefore, if you want to watch a weird, Christmas-themed, cultist, witchcraft, druid, slug horror movie with dangerous hobos and really ham-fisted feminism, then maybe watch this movie without watching this review of it first.
Am I wasting your valuable time?
Yes, let's talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 Initiation from 1990, which is actually only 1 year after the 3rd movie came out. Talking about this movie is quite complex because it's just wild. It's art in a good way. Not exclusively good way, but in a good way. Yes, this movie is mostly entertaining. So I'll just start talking about the plot. So the movie opens up in Los Angeles with the guy from Evil Speak playing a hobo who is picking up a half-eaten discarded burger, opens it up, complains about it, there not being any cheese in it, and proceeds to eat it anyway. He hears screams from the roofs of this building, and out jumps or falls a burning woman. She lands on the pavement, and her lower body is still burning. And that's a good visual. 3 minutes into this movie and it already looks a million times better than the 3rd movie, and actually the 2nd movie as well, and actually also the 1st movie. This movie looks much better than any of the 3 preceding movies. So that's a good sign.
Because I was there.
The movie then jumps to our protagonist Kim and her boyfriend, who turn out to be journalists. They are working for this LA-based newspaper, and this is where feminism first comes up in the movie. This very clearly takes a stance against the male-dominated culture in journalism, in media, in society as a whole in the early 90s. And as such, she's basically delegated to do tabloid journalism or cover the most basic of topics without really using her journalistic integrity, her insight, her prowess to actually write the stories that she's capable of writing and that she wants to write. She's a very ambitious person. However, her boyfriend, that seems to be probably as competent as her, maybe slightly less competent. He is not only just assigned the most interesting stories, he is also assigned stories he doesn't really want to cover, but he does so because it will enable him further career advancement. And also he takes stories, and that's important for the plot, he takes a story about this lady that actually he doesn't want to cover, because according to the hospital report, this person who died, who burned, it's just spontaneous combustion. Which is a thing, I don't think people really talk about spontaneous combustion anymore, but it used to be something people thought was real in the 80s and 90s. Today there has been more research about it, so it's not really something that people really take at face value anymore, but back then, yes, it was more of a thing than it is today. Kim doesn't buy that it's spontaneous combustion, and the guy just believes this is some basically tabloid journalism. This is boring and he doesn't really want to do this story, but anyway, he's assigned and everybody likes him. All the bosses are men. They're really condescending. Like when she asks to do the story, they say, "Oh, why don't you just go and make me a coffee instead?" And then her female colleagues, she says, "Oh yes, boys will be boys." And this just sets the tone. This movie has a lot of feminism in it. Feminism that could work as a theme, could work as commentary in another movie, but it kind of just feels very forced in this movie. It feels very ham-fisted, and it also feels like it doesn't belong, for reasons I'll talk about later. But at the same time, I can actually see why it belongs in the movie for those reasons. Of course, she's not happy with her lot at this newspaper, so she decides to go out and cover the story herself. It turns out that this building that this person on fire jumped from has a bookstore inside of it. So the lady, Kim, goes there to investigate, she goes there to ask questions, and doing so, she kind of complains a bit about man. Lady behind the counter, the owner of the bookstore it seems, talks to her, gives her advice, gives her some clues on where to go next, talks about some butcher who views all women as prostitutes, contributing to this, oh, all men are pigs attitude this movie has, and then hands her a book, saying, oh, this one is for free, you would really like this. She kind of refuses, but she accepts the book. And also, while she is at the bookstore, this hobo from earlier approaches her and she thinks he's trying to grope her or just harass her, so she gets really annoyed, tries to get rid of him. And as she had accepted the book, she moves up to the roof to investigate the area from where this woman jumped. And this is where one of the things I like the most about this movie, this is where it's first introduced, at least from what I could tell. So what this movie really does well, and I think it's mostly done in the first third of the movie. I could be wrong about this. In the vicinity of the character creates these faces, or these things that look like faces. An example of this is when she's walking towards the roof. Above her, there's water damage there, and that water damage forms what looks like a face. And as she enters the roof, there is another facade that also looks like a skull, even more than the other one. She doesn't really seem to notice this too much, but, you know, it looks quite nice. It's quite interesting what is going on. This is quite mysterious. She proceeds to go, I don't know what compels her to this, but she proceeds to go to the ledge of the building and she stands on it and almost passes out, meaning she almost drops to her what I would presume to be death. And I honestly don't understand what compelled her to do this. Is it to understand the motivation of the person falling or jumping from the roof? Was it some power that she's yet to fully understand or discover that compelled her to stand on the ledge like this? I don't know, it's not really explained. It's one of those moments in the movie that is a bit weird, but so much of the movie is weird, but it's one of those that sticks out to me. Anyway, as she gets dizzy and instead of falling down, sits down on the ledge, the hobo emerges. He approaches her and she gets a bit weirded out by him, a bit scared of him. It becomes clear to her that he actually wants to show her something. So he goes to the drainage pipe of the roof and takes out this big grub. This big lava or whatever it is disgusting, it's slimy, but he looks at it like out of curiosity, as if this is a nice thing I want to show you. This is a cute little thing. And she gets weirded out and rushes home, and he's baffled at why she reacting to this grub this way. Establishing some familiarity between him and the grub, but also expectation that she should react to it differently. Is this foreshadowing? I think it is. As she returns home to her apartment, she goes to her sink to clean her dishes and discovers it's full of cockroaches. That of course frustrates her and she gets annoyed trying to get rid of them, and then she cooks some really boring looking spaghetti. As she puts her plate on the table about to eat, she picks up the book. The first page she turns to has this weird spiral, this symbol of a spiral. And I forgot exactly what the movie tells you it's signaling. I will put it up on screen so you can see for yourself. But it's something about female source of energy. And as she has seen the spiral, she looks down and sees that her spaghetti is in the exact shape of the spiral. It of course weirds her out a bit. And then immediately after that, she just notices that actually from a certain angle, there's another face or skull in her apartment. This is the first time she really looks at this and realizes there is something to this. So we're not far into this movie. I think we are less than 20 minutes into this. We are already seeing weird symbols, weird magic, weird wizardry, weird druid magic, weird paganism, whatever it is. We are seeing grubs. We are seeing burning people. We are seeing good practical effects. Where does this movie go? Well, I'll tell you. I should already have given you a good idea of what you can expect from this movie, so if it already sounds very intriguing to you, then please watch it without having me spoil it any further. I will not talk about every single plot detail, so you can even finish watching my video without having it fully spoiled, but I will reveal some major things because there are some scenes I really want to talk about. I will put in some spoiler warnings, timestamps, so you can avoid them if you want to avoid having some of the more later moments of the movie spoiled.
Next thing you know...
So she continues having trouble at work. She goes to celebrate Christmas with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend's parents. Now, the boyfriend is shown to be fairly progressive. He defends women's rights like that. The dad is a die-hard Christian. This movie really ham-fists its feminism. He says, a woman's job is to be at home, raising the children, taking care of her husband. Then it's revealed that she's born Jewish, she doesn't believe in any religion, and she doesn't care for Christmas. And this triggers the dad so damn hard. So much so that she has to leave the building. And as they leave the building, the boyfriend is not fully supportive of her. He's quite supportive of her. They kind of fall out, but the reason why they really fall out is that he doesn't exactly assault her, but they're just in the middle of the street and he wants to kiss her, and then he kind of starts fondling her a bit when she's upset. This is my reading of the situation because it's not actually stated in the movie, that she's so upset about him still being a man. Boys will be boys. He's still driven by his lust, even at a moment where she needs his emotional support and understanding. He's still driven by his physical needs. And this causes them to momentarily break up. After the breakup, she is then seen celebrating a picnic with owner of the bookshop and a bunch of other women. Here's where much of the movie's plot is revealed. These women talk about there being actually a third person in the Bible in the creation story in Genesis, I think. Eve was not the first woman, that actually a woman was created equal to Adam, that they were created from the same soil, but she would not submit to him. She would not lay with him. And as such, God punished her. She rebelled against God because God was on Adam's side and created a submissive woman for Adam because Adam apparently couldn't take a strong, independent woman. And that lady then becomes the serpent that leads Adam and Eve to temptation. So basically what I read from this explanation is that these women are a part of a cult, a coven, or whatever you would call it, who celebrate or are descendants of this original woman, original independent feminist, and derive magic from her. Because they do have magical powers. Kim, the reporter, she gets more and more into this coven, more and more into this group, but also her will is taking a bit away from her. And this is where we'll spoil more about the plot, so you can skip to the timestamp if you don't want more spoiled. Because honestly, it gets wild from here. Some of it you can expect from the movie, from what I already told you, and some of it you can't. Some of it is so wacky that you wouldn't be able to just guess that this is what's going to happen. So you've been warned. Chronologically speaking, I might be a bit wrong here. If so, I'll correct myself in writing on the screen. She's drugged. They try and lock her up in their apartment. It is revealed that the woman in the beginning of the movie, she's the daughter, or was the daughter, of the main priestess, whatever you would call her, the owner of the bookshop. And the reason why she died was she was too weak to perform a ritual, the initiation ritual, to become a proper member of this coven. And the role that Kim is playing is that she'll take her role in the coven, seemingly supposed to be the new leader maybe in the future, or also what it seems to imply, she will breed the next generation of witches or druids, whatever you'd call them. Again, some of this is hinted at, some of this is pure speculation from me, some of this is outright stated in the movie. It's not exactly clear about what's going on, but it does hint at a lot of things. So, yes. And right after this is revealed to her, she manages to escape the coven, acting very quickly and rushing out the door. They weren't really doing a good job of keeping her there, to be honest. Maybe they expected her to be there out of her own will. Then why would they drug her? The movie does have plot holes. I do like it a lot, but it does have plot holes. And she then seeks refuge with her boyfriend at her own apartment. The boyfriend comes over. Something has changed about her. She seems like she has been possessed by a lustful devil. She goes from being extremely distraught and sad to incredibly lustful and forcing herself on the boyfriend. Not so much so that it's non-consensual, but the boyfriend is actually a bit surprised and taking it back. But as she is forcing herself on him, the hobo walks in the door. The hobo walks in, sits down at the edge of the bed while they are, about to do their thing, turns on the TV. If you've seen my video on the second movie, you know how the second film actually uses scenes from the first film to be a movie in the second film. This does the same about the third film. So the third film, very quickly, the third film has some dream sequences or psychic sequences where Laura, the main protagonist, is infiltrating the mind of the killer, the Santa Claus killer from the second movie. And in one of those visions or dreams or whatever you would call it, she sees Santa taking out a knife to kill her. That scene, mind you, this is a vision scene. This is not something that actually happens in the third film. This scene is in this movie. This is what the hope was watching on TV. If it's an ode ode to the former movie if it is simply just to tie it in with the franchise, because yes, this movie really stinks of what the third film also stunk from. Someone wanted to make a movie, they probably couldn't find the budget or someone to make it for them, so the only way they realized they could have this movie made was to slamp an existing franchise on it and then call it a day. This movie has nothing to do with the first 3 Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, for better or worse, but it really feels weird that this is a part of the franchise. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 is like Halloween 3. That's a good way to look at it. Like Halloween 3 is also druid magic, whatever. This is very similar to that, actually. I like it. It just doesn't really fit in with the franchise. It's just a bit weird. I think I just had to mention it. I should have mentioned it earlier, but I mentioned it now. Anyway, the hobo is there being happy watching TV while they're having sex. The man then suddenly realizes there's this guy in the room and they try to get him out. And he honestly just seems like a helpless fool. He doesn't really understand why people would be disturbed by someone having broken into their home. He's also very violent when he needs to be, so this fight with the boyfriend, again, spoiler warning, does result in the death of the boyfriend. He's maybe even bitten to death or eaten to death by this guy. There's a really cool scene where she's hiding under the bed and the hobo is just taking big chunks of the boyfriend's neck, making him bleed all over down. So you only see the lower part of his body, of course, but you see the blood rushing down. Really cool visual, really cool scene. She is then kidnapped by him, taken back to the coven for the initiation ritual. They are now in this room. This whole room looks like a womb or some kind of living organism they're now inside of. And all the witches are there. They're all holding her against her will. They're all holding her down. While the hobo, now fully undressed, is doing the big no-no to her. He's doing the big no-no while all the witches are cheering him on and even start taking out all these grubs. The grubs probably also go somewhere where they probably shouldn't go. A lot of misdeeds happen in this scene. A lot of no-no words, YouTube no-no words happening here. After this happens, she has all these weird visions. We don't really know what actually happens and what she thinks happens, like what she sees. But she develops a tail, it seems. Like her lower body becomes almost like a mermaid's body. She sees someone hanging extended from the roof by the nipples. It looks like a boyfriend. This is almost Hellraiser level. This is actually a good way to understand what's going on here. This movie feels like Halloween 3 meets Society meets Hellraiser. This movie is really wacky. After all this has been going on, she wakes up, looks down, and the tail, or her lower part, it's still human, but she has this skin on it, looking like she actually did develop a tail or whatever down there, and sheds off the skin, and this Japanese guy comes in and yells at her, "Oh, you're now been initiated." So the Japanese people owning the butcher shop knows what's going on. It's the only time this is brought up in the movie, by the way. She enters the bookshop and they start treating her like an equal because now she's been initiated. She freaks out, talks to the police. Nobody knows where the boyfriend is at. She's trying to investigate what happened to the boyfriend. Nobody knows where he's at. She then shows up at a Christmas party where, because the boyfriend went missing, she is now granted a promotion. Everybody there is like, "Oh, isn't this what you wanted?" And she just freaks out. She starts chucking drinks at people, just pushing people away, really acting out of her mind, leaving the building, and as she leaves, she sees the hobo enter a car. And honestly, this scene just reminded me of something from Rosemary's Baby. This is such a wacky scene. And this is where we enter the final part of the movie. I will not spoil it completely, but there's one more thing I want to touch on. This magic she's capable of, it's actually much more physical. For example, the scene I talked about where her legs are combining to form a tail. It demonstrates that this is what her ability is. Her ability is to use her body, extend it, merge it together, and then create something new from it. Not the most useful magic, but visually very interesting. At one point in the movie, she combines her hands and arms to form a big flaming baton that, upon striking someone, makes them spontaneously combust. And that's just what this movie gives you. That's what I want to say about the plot. No more spoilers from here. The movie is visually very interesting. It reminds me of, in terms of its plot, in terms of its visuals, of Halloween 3, of Hellraiser, of Society, of a bunch of other movies I can't pinpoint right now, Rosemary's Baby in a few scenes. It's all over the place, but in a really cool way. Of course, it does have its problems. It kind of tries to do too much. It has some plot holes. Because it's a low-budget movie, it has some visuals that are not so great. It has very few locations it's filmed at. It doesn't have the best acting in the world. It doesn't necessarily have the best character development or character motivation. People are a bit too one-dimensional at times. I actually do like that they don't really explain that much. A lot of it is left to be a big mystery. If the movie wanted to not have it be a big mystery, then of course I can fault it for that, because you really don't know what's going on. You really don't know what this coven, what this religion is all about. Only a few snippets here and there. You don't know why the initiation is so important. You don't know exactly what her role in it is supposed to be. You don't know exactly what power it holds over her. In some scenes, it seems like she's very influenced by it. In some other scenes, it seems like she's still herself. It really seems lackluster in some ways, but it could be intentional. I don't think it actually lessens the quality of the movie that it's a bit all over the place in this sense. Talking about all over the place, I did mention earlier that the feminism feels ham-fisted and even contradictory. Yes, it established that men are pigs, that men are bad, that boys will be boys. Men are condescending and will not treat women as equals. Even the most progressive of men will not treat women as equals. However, who are the bad guys of the movie? Who are the ones that go around killing people, assaulting them, doing no-no to people, having grubs, eat people, or go inside of people against their will? Who are enforcing their will on other people, who are trying to control other people? They are all women. And not only are they all women, they are all hardcore feminists. The evil people in the movie are the members of this coven that basically want to rule over men, who want to destroy men, who envision a world where they can be rid of the influence of men. More or less, because again, their agenda is not exactly explained. There are some scenes here and there that make it appear to be the case that they are really against men, but what we can at least see from the actions of the movie is that they have no problem killing everyone who is against them. They have no problem forcing non-consensual stuff upon people. They have no problem about using hobos or mentally disabled people to further their own goals. So what is the movie trying to say? Is the movie trying to say that feminism is actually bad? Is it saying that men are bad but women are worse? Is it saying that, well, men are bad, the patriarchy is bad, but hardcore feminism is even worse, or is at least as bad? Is it just trying to be moderately feminist, saying, okay, yes, equal rights, but hold it there, sister. We don't want too much of that. We don't want to give you too much empowerment, because then you will kill us. Or, which I think is more likely, is the movie just trying to be a movie and just trying to have this as an interesting plot device without thinking too deeply about it? I do think it is just playing on some trends of the time. It is scoring some easy points by making this a part of the theme without expanding or deliberating too much on it, but still having it as an ongoing theme, as an ongoing idea or problem that goes on throughout the movie, that is visible throughout the movie. I don't think the movie is that deeply concerned about what it's actually telling you in terms of its symbolism, in terms of its script, of its acting. I think it's just doing this for shock value, for trying to, with maybe more limited resources, tell you a compelling story that allows you to have more one-dimensional characters, to have more easily understandable goals. I think that's what's going on. I don't think the movie is actually as feminist or anti-feminist as it may appear to be. I think I should end my movie analysis here, or my movie review. There is so much to say. I like this movie a lot. Actually, when I watched it, I didn't enjoy it that much, because a lot of it is a bit too boring, a lot of it is a bit too convoluted, at least upon first watching it. But it is quite interesting and it is quite good. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movies in this franchise, but it is quite interesting. I honestly really can recommend you to watch this. If you like weird monsters, if you like insect horror, if you like practical effects, especially body modification, like if you've seen Society, you would definitely like this movie, I would argue. It has a lot of gross out stuff, it has a lot of weird occult stuff, it has a lot of mystery. The problem is maybe that it has all these elements. It takes way too much, crams it into one movie, and doesn't expand or utilize the different elements too much. There's magic in it, but it's almost not used. There's this mystic aspect of it with symbols showing up everywhere, but then it kind of discards that later in the movie. There are weird grubs, but it's never really explained why they're there, at least not properly, or what their role is. It kind of wants to do too much, so it's definitely not perfect, but it is worth a watch. This is a very underrated movie that people really don't talk enough about, and I think we should change that. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, at least found it somewhat insightful. I will, of course, be reviewing the last two movies of the franchise. You can stay tuned for that. You can decide to subscribe if you want to. I hope there's still a few days until Christmas when I release this. I'm not sure that will be the case, but I hope it is. If it is, happy holidays. If it's not, happy, I don't know, whatever day it is. Enjoy yourself. Bye.